Hey everybody, Bridget Lynn Dolgoff. My wild hair that didn't get in the bun. Anyway, I'm just waking up. And anyway, I've been kind of in contemplation mode lately. Kind of just really working on my own stuff. Working on, what's in my head. Working on what's in my head. So anyway, I got a little, oops, I just lost a fork. I have a baby quail hair too. So anyway, maybe just don't look at me if in the morning scares you. So I was listening. I had to go in the house this morning and get some coffee. So yeah, and so December, I'll be in my third year of no dairy products at all. First year was a little bumpy, but since dairy was something that I never really ever thought I would give up, but it turns out that it clogs, dairy isn't wholesome and pure anymore. Now, if you were milking your own cow and you were drinking the milk directly from a non-vaccinated, non-antibiotic, non-pesticide sprayed cow that ate your pasture, and you did biodynamic remedies on that pasture for microbial mass, you'd want to drink that milk from the cow because that cow would have microbial mass and there'd be all kinds of microbial action in that milk that would actually be like, a massive probiotic shot. And then the cheese that you aged from it would have bacteria, so you would generate bacteria, so you'd be generating a lot of vitamin B. And then making your own butter and whatever else. But yeah, since I don't have a cow that can ride around in my van with me, and a pasture for my cow, there's no way that I'm going to eat any kind of dairy that's bought. And still, I'd have to come to your farm and actually take a look at how, you raise your cows. Anyway. So, yeah. So, dairy was one of those things I never ever thought I would quit. I'd always been kind of more of a dairy product vegetarian my entire life. So, it was pretty tough. But once I got off of it, it's weird now, like the texture of cheese is just, I eat more, vegetables and broths and, things like that. So you get to cheese texture, and I get that cheese in my mouth and I can't seem to chew it up, and I can't seem to swallow it. Sorry, it's like mucus. Gag on it. So I was listening to this dumbass doctor. Gosh, I hate doctors. And I especially hate doctors because of the birth registration, that they're the brokers of the major deception, not only played upon Americans, but people worldwide, anyone born in a hospital. So they are the brokers of our physical body. And the whole Admiralty law, and I've talked about that on shows. Probably the largest deception that there is. So I really hate doctors, and I really hate the fact that they don't know. And I really hate doctors that are opportunists who are more than happy to be spokespersons for the government and go on TV and talk about things that they don't really know shit about. So it's one of my major crunchita. It really makes me pissed. All right. So, having cured my own cancer twice, one was brain cancer. I never went to a doctor. It's absurd. If I had a baby, I'd never go to a doctor, and I'd never take my baby to a doctor. It's absurd. And so now, I think it was the Today Show this morning or some bullshit. They're all mind controlled, Anyway, they were talking about diets and nutrition and exercise and, all this stuff, right? And they don't know shit about shit. Zero. They know zero about any of it. Even though they may do some of it. So I just kind of want to give you basics about kind of how the body runs along with the energetic systems. And this is not airy-fairy stuff. This is actually stuff that I have been taught by, people like traditional osteopath, not a DO, not a doctor's of osteopath. They don't get a pass. You have a doctor's license, you don't get a pass. I don't care how great your work is. You're a lying, deceitful mother effer. Until you get that, you shouldn't be allowed to touch anybody. So, so your ability to stay at a slim weight, mind you, this whole, fat free or, where you can see a lot of muscle mass is not healthy. It's really not healthy for your brain. It's been established that people like bodybuilders actually have the lowest IQ of any category, that you can put different people in because of they're not getting enough fat. Your brain needs a substantial amount of fats. And more I'm starting to realize those fats need to be kind of plant-based fats. For example, I've seen amazing results not only with myself but with animals. When you make coconut cannabis, you take the leaves off the cannabis, not the buds, because they have the CBD and they do have some, THC. And then you slowly cook them down to release those into coconut oil. And that coconut oil that fat becomes the carrier. And you can literally feel it as soon as you, put it in your mouth. You can feel it go, basically your brain sucks it right up. And you can feel the tension. Within 20 minutes, you can feel the pulse rate in the body change. And you can feel the tension change in the body. And so everything about your health directly relates on how your brain is functioning because it's your hard drive. And how it functions with the energetic systems. And it's working with the body. Now, trauma is directly related to this, so depending on your level of trauma, a lot of people who are heavy have had a lot of trauma. And whether the trauma is emotional or mental or emotional, mental, physical, spiritual, lately I've been watching a lot of stuff, and so many people have had spiritual trauma, whether it's been from a church or through satanic setting or um, sex, being raped by family members at a young age, or as they aged, in the military, in bathrooms at school, um, and then there's being beat up and going through war, and noise and levels of lights and flickering lights like on your TV, which have a lot of mind control, causes a lot of trauma and shutdown of the brain, which doesn't really communicate with the body. And then people are taking a lot of different kinds of drugs, and a lot of those, we'll just say, pharma drugs shut down, your mind-body connection. So if your brain and neurotransmitters are shut down, your brain is never going to have a relationship with your body, which means that you're never going to heal your body ever, right? This is why trauma, on any level causes, disease and distress. So, yeah, if you start working out like a wacko and you start really crunching your diet, yeah, you may get somewhere. You may have some major weight loss or whatever else. But the moment that you stop all that, you're going to go back to gaining all that weight. Because, the body and the hard drive, the brain are not working properly, number one. And number two, the underlying issues of why the brain and the body is not working properly and cannot process food, cannot process emotions, cannot process a lot of these other things. And so you have to get back to, opening all that stuff up so that those things can be processed. So by the time we're 40, most of us have at least, 4 compressions or subluxations or herniated discs, whatever you want to call them. And right there, you're unplugged. Your brain, the first one that your brain hits on its way down your spine is closed. So from whatever point that first, compression or herniated disc or whatever is at, has those nerves closed off. So anything below that, the brain is not regenerating, it's not fixing, and it's not helping. So where do people gain most of their weight? In their stomach, right? Or, in the back side, around their midriff. And that's because most people have some kind of compression towards the lower part of the spine. A lot of people fall, slip on ice. People have, biking accidents. A lot of people have had sexual abuse, which has, created probably some kind of damage to the structure, especially if this abuse was a battle and it was forced upon the young body, that the tissues were not developed and the bone structure was not fully developed, and it would force the pelvis to be ripped and torn and the joints in the legs to be partially dislocated, and it would create lots of compressions or subluxations or whatever, herniated discs in the lower part of the spine. So women want to know why they have, other than abductions and other things, if you and sexual trauma, Women want to know why their periods would be so bad. It's because, anytime that those lower parts of the spine are blocked, then the brain can't get in there and regenerate the uterus. It can't get in there and regenerate the ovaries. And then when the pelvis, the whole endometriosis deal, I hate doctors. I'm sorry. Every time I hear them talk about, it's rare that I hear one talk about what's really going on with the body, that have any remote clue. If they spend enough time working on people, they might actually understand it. But they treat people like they're the plague. So, I've had so many clients in the past people have called me to work on them that get diagnosed with MS, and they want to know should they take the drugs or not. And usually it's a massive herniated disc, usually in the lower part of their spine. I mean, some people that do get an MS or some kind of, I'm not going to call it, it's a virus, get some kind of virus that attacks your nervous system, and ceases the function of you being able to move your body parts and your muscles. That's a neurological function. So here we go back to the brain. So what's going on between the brain and the body? So, but most of them, it's, if the doctors would have looked at their spine, they would have said, oh, wow, you don't have MS. Wow, you have this massive herniated discs, and that's why in your lower back, you can't feel your legs, and your legs go numb. Yeah, it's not MS. Sorry. So, in order to deal with losing weight and dieting and getting over these hurdles, we have to get the brain back into a relationship with the body, which means that we do have to limit our toxins. So if you're living in an apartment building in a place, or you're living in a state that they spray for mosquitoes several times a year, that's a problem, because that affects the neurosystem. So all of those, pesticides that they spray by air, we're not going to even just talk about chemtrails, right? We'll just leave that off the table. But, if they're spraying these pesticides in the air, those are damaging your neurotransmitters, right? So not even talking about them not having a relationship with your brain, but they're totally blocking them. So your body is just going to go completely haywire because it's not even going to have communication systems from your brain. And that stuff needs to be flushed out. And if it's in your body, it's going to be in the food supply there, wherever you're living, and it's going to be in your water supply. So we talk about fluoride in the water. In almost every bottled water, there's fluoride. Even in here in Reno, you go to like some of these water filter places that filter the public water, you can get water. They don't even really understand fluoride. They don't even have the proper filters to clear out the fluoride out of the water. So what the hell are you paying for the purified water for? Not really sure exactly what it's getting out. I don't think they know what exactly it's getting out. So there are huge amounts of toxins in the environment, right, that we humans have put into the environment. These types of, the other thing too is radiation. Everything is so radioactive right now, especially in the United States, because of Fukushima. So you've got to take iodine, right? In order to at least start to try to feel better, try to at least start to feel like you can get up in the morning, to start to clear some of the radiation and other materials out of your body. Because, if your thyroid doesn't work, you are going to feel like hoo-hoo crapola. And, you may get a diet to sort of make you feel better, but in the end, it's not going to be the be all because you're not getting enough iodine in your diet to actually clear out the radioactive material in your system. And I'd say probably pretty soon, half of the people in the population of the United States will have hyperthyroidism, Hashimoto's disease. They're going to have all kinds of thyroid stuff. And they're already having it. I mean, like, babies in California are being born with hypothyroidism. I wonder why doctors don't want to talk about that. Oh, mean that doctors won't be able to help you, right? If there's radiation poisoning everywhere, what's a doctor going to be able to offer you? Zero. So they have to play the game to keep the money going. And they're going to die in the end too, because they're in the same areas where people are getting all this radioactive cancer. All right, so let's just kind of all right. So let's just kind of give you a basic on how the systems work. Everything in your physical body is a hydraulic pump. It's a pumping system. Right? It has a way to pump. You also have energy systems that are attached to you that are the power generators. So in your field, your energy field, you want to call it your soul or whatever else, you have a luminous sphere, a field. And if we lived in a healthy society, this sphere would be full and plump when we were born. And it's our power for our life. It's the power for the physical life. But what happens because of trauma, remember, mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual trauma, it gets punctured. Some shamans say it's like everything that happens to us in our life is like a direct hit to our energy field. And then that energy leaks out. And it leaks all over, everywhere we've been. And in some places, people have actually picked this energy up, especially people who feed off, and they can be human too, and they feed off distress of others, and they feed off distress of animals. So, but anyway, so it's all leaking this energy, especially sexually. Once women have sex with a male, he ends up feeding off of her forever. And you can come back in a lifetime and you still have people feeding off of you out of your energy. So your sphere is your power generator. When you no longer have power in it, you die. And then you come back, you're born to somebody else, and you might get a little bit of energy back in that sphere. But most of what people are running on is the energy that they're getting from their mother. So less and less women live a very pure life, that they would have a lot of energy in their sphere that they would be able to pass some on to their offspring. Okay, so that's the sphere. That's the main place, the battery where the energy is stored. So then you have what's called chakras. People call them chakras, but they're just compressors. And so each chakra deals with a diaphragm in the body. Okay. So each diaphragm in your body, 6 major diaphragms, well, seven diaphragms. The diaphragms in your body where the corresponding chakras are open and close, open and close, open and close in different directions, right? Your pelvic one opens and closes from the side and back, and below and then up. So they have, basically multiple directions that they're compressing and contracting and compressing and contracting and compressing energy. So this helps the body to open and close, open and close, open and close. But, we have all these trauma devices. Orthodontics is like a major torture device. And what it does is it reshapes the palate, one of the most important diaphragm areas in the body, right? This mouth area, and the third eye area, and the seventh chakra. So you got 3 major diaphragms, opening and closing, that basically with one shot, orthodontics, boom, completely closed. I've seen it change personalities. I've seen it, immediately start creating different kinds of disease because it shuts down the ability of the brain and the structure of the brain to compress and contract, compress, contract, right? Because the spine is a major hydraulic pump. And the spine needs to constantly move, and it's using the diaphragms in the body to move it so that the spinal fluid regulates itself up the spine into the brain, and the brain can pressurize, right? So that the brain is sitting in a perfect amount of fluid, and it's being pressurized all the time because the spine is pumping it up. People want to know, I think that, this new childhood meningitis disease has everything to do with the relationship to the toxins in the environment and the neurotransmitters. Their little bodies can't take how toxic the environment is, and they're having a neurological breakdown, and their bodies are not being able to move, right? I have therapies. I can fix that. I call it a reboot, but it's a hands-on manipulation to get the brain back online and kick the body on and kick the toxins out, right? And it helps to sort a lot of that stuff out. But the thing is, you could have healing machines, and you could have pills, and you could have everything. The problem is the focus is not on the environment and what's causing a lot of what's going on, right? And trauma, toxins, and the physical body not having enough power to generate itself. So you have the sphere, feeds the chakras, right? It produces the energy, so the chakra is plugged into the sphere, and that's how it's getting its power. And the chakra, is the power source for the individual diaphragm. And the diaphragms are part of the smaller hydraulic pumps, right? Energetically and physically, that help to activate and pump the smaller hydraulic pumps in the system. So digestive tract is a hydraulic pump, colon hydraulic pump. Everything's a hydraulic pump, right? And, excuse me, you have fluid in them that has to move around, like, say, a lymphatic system. And that's a manual pump, by the way. So you have some stuff in your body that are manual pumps that have to be physically, activated in order to clean themselves out. So you could see how eating dairy, poisonous, toxic dairy, and you not walking enough could be a serious problem of clogging your lymphatic system. And then once the lymph nodes start to get enough debris in them and they're not clearing themselves, then they start to harden like rocks. And you can kind of feel them, when you're touching someone. You can feel them when you touch yourself. Like, what is that hard thing in there? Well, that's a lymphatic system that's basically, expanded past its little bulbous. And it's so packed full of stuff, and now it's calcifying. And then that changes the tissue. So that starts to change the physical tissues, right? And then the tissues are not as pliable as they should be, because now they're being torqued. The deepest parts of the tissues are being torqued by the lymphatic system that is, number one, not working, and number two, in some, ways is overexpanded and calcified. So don't be scammed because it looks like the trend with doctors, because, now they can't sell drugs anymore, right? A lot of them can't sell drugs. A lot of them don't want to be under the scrutiny to sell pain medications, and they've got to keep their yacht, and they've got to keep their boats, and they've got to keep all their bullshit. They've got to keep harming. Veterinarians are the same way. Same way. They're being trained and educated the same way. So if you're dealing with a doctor that doesn't really understand the basics of how a body works and is unable to help you to release your trauma in a good way, so that you can lose weight and feel better, and then you can focus in on the environment. It's the environment. It's the environment. Everything that's wrong with our physical bodies right now has to do with the environment in some way, shape, or form. And yes, it's time to do something about that. It's time to, wake up and educate yourself. So don't get involved in a lot of these, diet scams and whatever else. I mean, the proper diet is for you to grow food. Seriously. That you are doing and rendering and restoring your own soil in your own yard using natural resources to do so, and then trying to at least grow 25% of your food in your own yard, right? And I don't ask people to do anything that I don't do. So you can go back and you can look at my channel and you can take a look. And as a traditional osteopath, person that worked on people, and yes, I do deal with the duty as well. But one of the reasons I went back and got my farming credentials in biodynamic farming was because I needed to figure out where the root of a lot of our health problems is coming from, and it's the environment. It's the sterilizing of the environment, the killing of our environment, which means that we're sterilized and we're dying. So instead of, start walking. You have hydraulic pump systems in your body that have to be physically, manually kept flowing and working. And that takes walking. So get out there and walk a couple times a day, right? See what's going on outside in your environment. And then try to figure out ways that you could probably eat a little bit better, right? Maybe choose different kinds of products instead of eating all that dairy, or, other things. Find substitutes. For example, I found out I really like macadamia milk. So instead of, half and half dairy creamer, I use macadamia nut milk in my coffee. And, over the years, I've gotten used to it. I've accidentally had some dairy creamer in my coffee, and it made my coffee so thick, and it was disgusting. And I love honey that comes from organic places, that is the blooming honey, which is the flower bloom honey. Oh. So, I either use coconut sugar, or I use organic and free trade wherever possible, and macadamia nut or honey in my coffee. So I have a nice big bowl of coffee. And in the morning I sit and I just enjoy the beautiful honey in my coffee, and the macadamia nut, which is 80% monosaturated fat. And I get the macadamia milk that comes from New Zealand. It has like 0 toxins, no nuclear, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure that it's been tainted with dust from other places, but it's the best choice that I can make, right, for myself. So I always tell people I do online sessions, and I specialize in all these things. I specialize in trauma. I specialize in nutrition, and I specialize in diet, and I specialize in soil restoration and growing food. And I specialize in your structure, and how the structure works, and how the energy field is working or not working. But please, 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 please do your homework. And don't be distracted. Sometimes this whole exercise thing, people can get really distracted in it and lost, because what it's doing is it's giving them, chemicals that their brain is making that deal with their trauma, so that they don't have to deal with their trauma. But eventually what's going to happen is that they're going to break down from working out, or something's going to happen, and they're not going to be able to work out. And then everything is going to fall apart, right? So addiction is covering up the trauma, and the trauma is what's created everything else, health-wise, and what's going on environmentally. Because the more traumatized we are, the less we pay attention that they're spraying, chemicals and heavy metals in the sky. The less we pay attention that, they put fluoride in the water. The less we pay attention to war and famine and drought. And you know what? There's, this is the thing. We can fix everything. It may take a while, but we have to stop. We have to stop a lot of it. And there isn't anybody out there in the mainstream nor the alternative media that actually is really giving solutions. I feel like at least I have solutions, and at least I'm giving those solutions to people one by one, and as best that I can do it. But there's no reason that we shouldn't have water in aquifers, right? We just have to change how we deal with the land. And we have to start planting, covering areas where water likes to sit, and create water areas where water can sit, especially after flooding and rain, where the grasses and everything act like filters, and the water can go back into the underground water systems. The thing is that we've allowed our governments to make roads and all these dams and drainage ditches to divert all of our water somewhere else. So getting water back in the aquifers is not a problem, right? There's easy, perfect solutions for them that actually helps the environment and heals the environment, right? But we don't have any intelligent people that are out there doing this work, and nor are we paying attention to what they're doing, because we're so traumatized. And you want to get rid of a lot of your trauma, throw your TV out. throw the largest mind control device out, because that thing is pulsating. I can't even get around TVs because I can start to feel it drain my energy. And I can feel pain start to develop in my body. And as soon as I walk into a place, haven't even had a TV forever. As soon as I walk into a place and I can feel that pulse in that TV, I immediately start to feel sick. Sick and tired. And that's why they forced everybody to go to digital and away from analog. See, analog, they could do like subliminal messages. But digital, there's a pulse that's in the digital, which is actually hypnotic. And it hypnotizes you asleep. That's why people get in front of the TV and they can't get away from it. And then, they go to bed with it on, right? All night. That's not sleep. That's being under, massive hypnosis. It would be like, feels like to me like Valium, like I overdose on Valium, if I'm around the TV for a period of time. So I really try to stay out of houses, if I go to work on people, really try to stay away from the whole TV thing, want to turn down and turn off the electronics, at least during that time frame, right? So that work can happen. So, these are a lot of things that doctors aren't going to tell you that aren't part of the whole system. So you feel like you can't get well. You feel like you can't get enough sleep. You feel like you can't stay on track with your diet. You feel like, you're fat. You feel like you're depressed. You feel like, there's nothing worth living for. That's fact. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with you. Because everything in your environment is stealing your power. Everything in your environment is making you sick. Everything in your environment is controlling you and your energetic systems and halting the ability for your body and the systems, hydraulic systems, to actually work properly. Because the whole thing is a giant lie. So when this trend starts and these doctors, I can already see it happening. They're all going to become experts in, exercise and nutrition because we don't have another outlet. Yeah, and we need to make money. We have $400,000 in medical loans, and there's no way else to pay them off. So we have to continue to scam the public because we're the experts. Well, just because you're licensed to practice medicine doesn't mean shit. So when you go to doctors and people who you try to ask questions to, and they just don't really have very good answers, or they don't have answers at all, or they don't want to give you the time of day to give you an answer, go to someone else. Find someone else. And I don't take insurance, but, I've moved out in the last year to do online healthcare, to help people, to explain healthcare to them, help them with whatever they're facing and whatever they're dealing with. And I only take cash. So, and I do give a discount rate on the first online session. And so if you need someone out of the box who actually has real life education and experience in, and this is the other thing, let me just throw this out there. So I've studied with a lot of amazing people, and I've done a lot of some mainstream studying, and I've done, apprenticeships, and, one time I had a clinic. It wasn't my clinic. It was a shared clinic. And there were several doctors who resigned their medical licenses because they were trying to practice more holistically and alternatively. And an immunologist and, several different people. And it was interesting because I came on board and they had no idea really about my work. But what they found was their patients that went through some of my treatments got better faster, or could get a foot up on recovery faster, and had a tendency to regenerate a lot faster. But it took some time for them to actually understand my work. And then I got busy with other things. I wanted to go back to school for farming and stuff like that. So I ended up, leaving and kind of doing my own stuff. And it wasn't until like 6 years later that actually I sat down with one of the doctors. They called me because they had something going on. So they found me through the grapevine, asked me, I was still working on people, if I could come, work on them, and that they were having some serious problems and they really weren't doing a very good job with trying to figure out why it was happening or how to fix it. So I went in and assessed the situation and started doing treatments, and they started getting over the hump, right? Still a little bit stubborn in their doctor ways, in their belief systems, but it was the first time that one of the doctors actually really, after asking me questions, right, and actually really thinking about what I had said. See, I'm like almost 50, so I have 30 years of a body of work that I have learned and been trained and studied from all different kinds of people. And because I'm mutable, I, have taken what I learn and I digest it, and then I include it in my body of work, right? And I, shed off what doesn't work or doesn't apply, what the lie is, what the bullshit is,